Welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. I'm your host, Justin. I'm here with Jason. I'm here with Dan. We got the crew all together. Dan, we missed you last week because you were at a little bit of a spoiler alert, KubaCon in San Francisco. So welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Missed you guys.
Yeah. We got an interesting show for everybody. Yes, I think he did. Although he didn't message us once or send us any pictures.
No pictures.
Yeah.
There are many tales to tell without the pictures.
Well, I guess what happens at KubaCon stays at KubaCon, Jason.
Well, yeah. I have some. I can post some. I just, haven't.
I see.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, we have a great show for you guys today. We are going to be talking about RPG mechanics that we hate. Normally, we like all of the different mechanics. We like playing lots of different systems and trying things out. We like goofy initiative things. And we, of course, love grappling. Just kidding. We don't love grappling mechanics. But there are other ones.
Nobody loves grappling mechanics.
Nobody loves it.
Person playing the monk.
Right, exactly. And there are mechanics that we really don't like that we're going to talk about today. But first and foremost, Geek Week. How was your Geek Week, Dan? Why don't you kick us off? I think you had the biggest one.
Oh, man. I've got like 6 Geek Week stuff, 6 weeks of Geek Week. KubaCon was fantastic. It's in the San Francisco Bay Area. It is on Memorial Day weekend. They have a quick Thursday night registration, and then they go from Friday to Monday. They use the Hyatt Regency. There's about 3,000 people at the con. There's another building that had Warhammer tournaments and stuff. I never made it over there, sadly, because I was doing other things. KubaCon, I'm going to say, in my opinion, I'm going to put it up for the most family-friendly convention in America. I said it out loud. Most family-friendly. They have a kids' room from young to 13, young ages. I'm sure it's like 4, 5, or 6, up to 12. And those ladies run that kids' room like it's heaven on earth. After 2 days, I brought my 10-year-old with me, my 10-year-old son. He was there with his 12-year-old cousin. And on the second day, he was hugging the ladies and saying goodbye and being sad that he wouldn't be there for the rest of the convention. They do so many fun things. It's so engaging. They incentivize the kids with KubaCon bucks, and they take them on parades and get them dressed in armor, and they go interrupt gamers trying to do serious gaming by yelling KubaCon. Cool. Yeah. I cannot say enough amazing things about how family friendly that particular convention is. There's rules about checking your kids in and out that are parent based. It's all really great stuff.
And it's in the where?
It's in San Francisco area. It's in Burlingame, which is it's in the airport. If you've flown in and out of SFO, you've been in Burlingame.
It's actually not a hard airport to get in and out of.
No. And so you never really get into like the piers or anything like that. So I did one of those conventions where I said, because I was invited to come, and it's really my brother Nate's, who's been on the show, it's really his thing. He had leftover tickets. He had rolled over because of COVID. So he had extra tickets. That's how we got there. And I did whatever he wanted to do. And so the cool thing about KubaCon is that if you don't know what you want to do, you can bring your own board games. There's people walking around with dollies with 6 or 8 or 9 big board games. And you set up and you put a flag on your table and you wait for players to come sit down, and then you start playing the game.
Huh.
Fantastic. So great for impromptu board gaming. Very exceptional impromptu board gaming. And the hotel space is in this beautiful atrium in the hotel. It's fantastic. We were going to do that, but at the last minute, his buddy was like, well, you never get to do those awesome historical games you like, all those naval combat things. He's like, you're right. I need to do naval combat. And so we did hour after hour after hour of World War II naval combat on a 16-foot by 6-foot board. And then the next day we did Ships of the Line, Battle of Trafalgar. And then I had to go. We did some other games on the periphery. We did Wings of Glory in a big group. My son and his cousin loved that. They had a great time with Wings of Glory. And we also did Car Wars, which was a blast, the latest edition of Car Wars. I give that 2 thumbs up. However, Historical gamers are cool. They are fun. They're nice guys. They want you to learn their system. Their systems are always tech crunchy. They like long turns. They like long games.
Mm-hmm.
But they also like running the sim. They're there to run the situation. They're like, okay, now we're going to do an alternate version of the Battle of Trafalgar. What if it went like this? Where they're going to do an alternate version of another battle where the British got caught by Japanese planes. And I think the rule set we used was General Quarters 3 for that World War II era naval combat. And they said, okay, instead of the Japanese fighters coming through and sinking all these British ships, what if they got into a conventional naval, cannon scenario? That means, guys, if you're doing historical games, they're not symmetric.
Oh, they're 100% asymmetric.
They're never symmetric. So you quickly have to figure out which side won in real life and join that. If you care about winning, if you're going to be pissed to lose, join the side that won in real life. The other thing is that they're not as interested in you having fun as much as they are running the sim in the hall.
Totally.
And so I was in 2 games back to back where my ships were not on the board for hours. They're like, "Oh, your ships don't come in till later in the scenario." So, like, you're almost in about 8 turns, and they opened up the dealer hall. I'm like, "I'm going to the dealer hall," and I went to the dealer hall in the middle of the game. Like, I'm serious. And so, in the Battle of Trafalgar one, which was Ships of the Line, that one we weren't allowed to touch the guy's minis because he had these like 2.5 inch long by about 1.5 inches tall ships, specific named, and he had individually glued in the rigging for the ropes.
Oh my gosh.
We were not allowed to touch his minis. Fine. Still played that game. Drove me absolutely insane. Once again, I was not on the board for 2 hours until after it started. But you have to go along with that. You have to be like, I'm doing historical gaming.
Yeah.
And this is part of the fun. And if it's not part of the fun, somewhere behind 4 hours of World War II not playing and 2.5 hours of Ships of the Line not playing, my morale broke personally as a gamer. I was gung-ho for 6 hours, guys.
Yeah.
Somewhere around 6.5 hours, I was like, you've lost my interest.
Yeah.
You've lost my interest. But nice guys, good guys. I like historical gamers. They're good people. They're just there for a different kind of fun, and you have to be there for their fun. They're not there for your fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's okay. And we can all be accepting of diversity in gaming. But
let me paint you a picture here, literally with Microsoft Paint. So years ago, I went over to a buddy's house who's big in historical game, and I never played. He said, "Come over and play historical war game, and it's amazing." So this is the map, right? We'll just say that's the map of the geographical area, right? So I was playing, I don't even know what time it was. I was like Prussia, right?
Okay.
And so this whole map was made into like little, octagons or whatever, hex squares. So I came in, the whole map's laid out. He's got all the people set up. It's like, guys, who am I playing? He says, "You're playing these guys." That was it. The entire rest of the map was all him. And for 3 hours, all I did was sit in these 3 squares and roll dice to fend off his guys that were invading into that land for 3 hours. Never moved. At all. Just sat there for 3 hours. So I was like, you invited me to come over and basically just roll the dice against you and just sit here. And dude, it might have been the last historical minis game that I've ever played.
Yeah, and if you don't know what you're in for,
that was my areas, and the rest of it was all him. So,
know thyself. Know what you like in a game. Yeah. If you know you're not going to drive with that, don't do it. So Nate thought the next day he was going to do Armada with his son. He's like, well, it's Star Wars. We're going to have some ships and some fighters. We're going to mix it up. It's going to be great. They did it on too big of a map. They had 7 players, everybody against everybody. And they individually plot, and everybody had too many ships, and they individually plotted every single movement. And he had the exact same problem in Star Wars because the scenario was not designed very well. He's like, I've been playing this game for about 3.5 hours. I've moved 18 inches on the map and have not engaged with anybody.
Yeah.
The same thing can happen in non-historical games.
Sure.
And so that was my Geek Week. KublaCon was great. I still give it thumbs up. It was still awesome. I did other games too besides those, but those were the big time sucks.
So you mentioned, Dan, Warhammer was in a different building. That was actually the Bay Area Open, which is one of the major Warhammer events of the year. You can win kind of the golden ticket to the World Championships at that event. So it was probably pretty well attended, I imagine.
Yeah, I know that there weren't 3,000 people in the building I was in. There was like a missing. There was hundreds of people missing, and I felt like they would be over there. And look, I was on there looking at like Star Wars Legion and other games that were competitive, and I was getting a little wistful. And I'm like, oh, I can't play any of these. I'm getting on an airplane. So anyway, that was my Geek Week. KublaCon. Go to different conventions, guys. Here's one other last thing about KublaCon. The only other time I went it was in 2006. Between 06 and 2023, it felt like the same vibe. It was a very similar vibe. So you guys we should always be trying to go to different conventions to find different vibes, because I think they've done a great job of preserving their KublaCon thing, which is unique from everybody else. So I recommend it for folks in the California area during Memorial Day. And it's always Memorial Day. They don't reschedule it. It's always Memorial Day. So
nice.
All right.
Very good.
That was my very long Geek Week, but I went to a damn convention, so that's why.
So wait, does it go over Memorial Day or just the weekend?
Yeah,
Memorial Day.
It goes into it's Friday to Monday, and you can show up on Thursday night for a couple hours. I'm not going to get into my gripes about convention planning or organization. I think we've been to a lot more type A, very organized things. They struggled with it, but I'm not gonna air my gripes because I don't like negativity on the internet. I'm trying to avoid that. So I do recommend it, even with the bumps of the road.
Cool, very good. All right, Jason, how was your Geek Week?
I put together I decided on my next war band for Warcry. It's the Astragon True Bloods, the monk vampires. I normally don't like.
Tooth Fairy came.
Yeah. It's funny. So Blood Hunt is the box that they come in, right, with the claws of Karnak or something like that. Yep. The corn guys. And Justin, you had it on the shelf, so I was like, "Hey, do you have this?" Like, yeah. I was like, "Well, let me just take it off your hands because it's obviously you're not going to paint it.
Not immediately.
Not anytime soon."
Right.
So
I have other things in the hopper. Yes, thank you very much for pointing that out.
So I go to work. I think I asked you over the weekend, I was like, can I swing by and get it? But it never worked out. And then I came home from work and I was so tired. I came home, went upstairs. I literally fell on backwards onto my bed with holding my phone. I saw you right at that moment. You said, "Hey, did you take a nap?" And I was like, I literally just fell on my bed. You're like, "Oh, did the Tooth Fairy come?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, I at that point, I just put my phone down and didn't even respond to you. And then I'm falling asleep. Finally, my daughter comes in and says, "Hey, Dad, there's something under your pillow." And the whole box was under my pillow.
Dude,
I just laid my head down on top of it.
It was a box like this.
I know.
It's not small box. It's the size of a pillow.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And it's hard and pointy.
Yeah.
Right?
But
you guys have a very weird relationship.
They put my pillow over top of it. My pillow, I have a soft pillow, I guess. I laid down. I didn't even notice it. I just fell asleep immediately. And then my kid had to come jog me. And then I pulled up your phone. I was like, "That's what you mean,
So I delivered the box, and his daughter was coming home from school right at that same time. And I said, "I need you to put this under your dad's pillow." And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "I need you to put this under, not on top of, under his pillow." And she just gave me a look of "Okay, weirdo, but I'll do it since you're my dad's friend, So she took it in. And then Jason's wife literally called me 10 minutes later and was like, "So what is the deal with this?" I was like, "Oh, Jason's taking this off my hands." And she's like, "And you want it under his pillow?" I go, "That's right."
I'm self-editing. I'm self-editing so many jokes right now.
Yeah,
if we were not recording, I would be skewering you guys.
Good.
So yeah, it was good though.
Yeah, so that was first. I assembled the Askergons. I'm excited to play them. and figure out how that goes. I'm not 100% convinced that I'm really going to stick to their play style, but I want to figure out what that play style is. So I want to do something different than my ogres where I'm just running around smashing things. I like tactical stuff, so I'm curious to see how this goes. I tried the Slaves to Darkness a little while ago, but I feel like they just did not hit hard enough. Like all their profiles were just a little too less to be able to just kill something when I needed to kill it. These guys are kind of the same in terms of like they're like toughness 4. They've got like 18 to 20 some wounds, but they only have like 2 to 3 attacks, but they hit a lot harder. They have like 4-6 profile, right, on their damage. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Using abilities and buffs to get in there and be a little more tactful. I did force myself on the they don't really have chaff because their smaller guys are like 90 points, which is kind of high for a chaff. I mean, it's below 100, but it's a little expensive. But I forced myself to do. You can do 2 different options on the build. You can do one option that is just a big sword that's like range 1 inch that does I think like 2-5 damage, 2 attacks. Or you can build it with a range 3-inch whip, 2 attacks 1-4. Oh no, it's 3 attacks 1-4. So I forced all my little guys are range 3, or the range 3 guys. So I'm gonna make that how I learned to play with these guys, is using them to be out of engaged range, but be able to get in there and try to do those little death by 1,000 cuts kind of a thing. So I'm trying to do a little bit of a different play style. So I'm excited for these guys. So that was my first part of the Geek Week. The next part, and I'll share my screen here, is I actually put the oil wash on my ATST for Star Wars Legion. So let me share my window here. I shared this last time. This is the before picture, right? That we saw last week, and then this is the after picture.
Wow.
So I really am happy with how this turned out, right?
Accurate.
So once again, before and after.
Nice.
I think it looks really good.
It's amazing when that oil wash settles in those crevices, really how it makes it pop, right?
Yeah. It really helps, I think, add a sense of real wear. I still need to put the snow on the base since it's all of my stuff's a snow theme. I don't know if I'm going to put any snow on the actual model though or not. I'm just going to do the base and see how I feel, because I really kind of like the model the way it looks.
I wouldn't like it. You stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't put snow on it. And really, where like snow's gonna rest on that thing, like they would be brushing that off because it's like the hatch on the top.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like they'd be brushing that off to get into it. So
yeah,
I wouldn't put snow on it.
Yep.
I picked up an oil-based rust from AK when I was at KublaCon. AK Interactive, and I'm looking forward to using that on my soon-to-be painted speeder tank.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and right now it's primed. It's painted on the inside. You know why you can't see it? Because don't waste time painting the inside of the cockpits, because you can barely see your paint job. So I did a really sloppy job on the inside. Thank you, Army Painter Speed Paint, because I slapped it on. But if you put a flashlight in there and look in, you can still see. But yeah, vehicles are a lot of fun. I'm getting. Thank you for showing your vehicle, Jay. That was awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to paint. I'll tell you this. It took me a while to get happy with the paint. Here's the funny thing, right? I tried so many different paints and colors of gray and shades and everything, using all my expensive paints. You know what I ended up using on that stuff was the freaking apple barrel stuff out from Walmart is what I ended up with. And I got exactly what I wanted with it. So I was like, you know what? All right. 97-cent jug of paint, and then like, a $4 like tube of oil from Hobby Lobby.
So the interesting thing is people will crap on, the apple bottom jeans. The apple
bottom
crate,
of the barrel.
Right, exactly.
Apple barrel.
They'll kind of crap on the apple crate paints, which, like, if you're using a small brush and you're trying to paint fine detail, I agree with that, because when you get it super thin down, like, it'll start to break apart. The pigments will start to separate. with how you need to paint like your miniature with a brush. But if you're blowing that thing through an airbrush, that's a completely different story.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and so if you can get it through your airbrush, well, you got to thin it down with the airbrush thinner and stuff like that. But if you can get it thinned down, then it's a different story than painting it like by hand. So
yeah, because the airbrush thinner is a medium that keeps the pigment from separating, so that helped a lot. Yep. Cool.
Yeah,
that was me.
Cool. Mine was not super eventful. I have been playing, I think I talked about this a little bit last week, but I've been playing Sea of Thieves still a little bit more. This has kind of been my go-to, let's just have fun on the Xbox and decompress a little bit while I'm waiting for Diablo 4, which I will have pre-access to tomorrow night at 7 p.m. because I ended up ordering the mid-tier, the
ultra digital mid-tier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you got the digital deluxe, right? Which is like not the ultimate platinum or something like that, whatever it is. Yeah. So I got tier 2, right? And mostly because it unlocked the battle pass for the season or whatever it is. It sounds like Diablo's going to be using a battle pass that's similar to like Fortnite in their seasons, where you'll have cosmetics and upgrades and things like that you can have if you get the battle pass. You don't have to have it. You can grind without it, but it'll give you access to certain things if you do have it. I wanted to see what it was like, so I got that one instead of the other one, the base version, and it gave me 4 days to play it before it comes out. So at 7 p.m. tomorrow night, I'll be able to play Diablo. And I was super excited about that until my wife informed me that we have tickets to a play in Richmond that starts at 7 p.m. tomorrow night. So that's an hour and a half away.
You'll love to play.
Yeah. When Destiny 1 released, there was the beta. And some people would argue that the entire time it was up, it was a beta. But, there was the real beta. And then I think everybody's character reset on day one.
Yes, it did.
On day one, I had a business trip pop and I was gone for a week. And when I came back, all of my friends were way leveled out with gear and everything. And I had to play catch up by myself. I had to play the game by myself for 2 weeks to beeline up to where they were to be able to.
Nice.
It's just I fell so far behind, but I'm curious to see how the battle pass thing works. That'll be cool. I have totally high expectations for this game.
I do too, and that might be dangerous, but I do too.
Dude, I know they have never gone wrong with Diablo in my mind. Right. Even when Diablo 3 first came out and people got all up in arms about the auction house on the computer, it was still a amazing game.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Just ignore the auction house.
And then it just got even better with all the seasonal stuff.
The seasonal stuff was so amazing.
Yeah.
It was such a good game.
So I think they learned a lot of good lessons. My daughter and I just finished a Diablo 3 seasonal character a couple weeks ago. So she's super excited to do the local co-op with Diablo 4. So I'm excited.
Which classes did you play?
I played the monk just because that's one I hadn't played in a long time. It's not my favorite class. It's not my favorite. But she ended up playing the Demon Hunter as well. So
Demon Hunter's cool. Yeah,
Demon Hunter is a good one.
Yeah. Witch Doctor was my first class I ever played. Loved it.
Yeah.
And then my next one I played was it's not called Mage or Wizard. What do they call it in that game?
Wizard.
I'm spacing. Wizard,
yeah.
Which was fun. And then I played...
Or is it Sorcerer?
Sorcerer. Man, it's too many games. Too many fantasy games. And it's too many ways to refer to the same thing. Except every fantasy series has Barbarian.
That's true.
But anyways, great game.
Totally. So, I'm looking forward to that. But like I said, I've been playing Sea of Thieves, and it's funny because now I think Jason, you played with me on Friday.
Yeah.
Was it Friday night? Yeah.
It was one of the nights this week.
Friday, Saturday night, one of those nights. But we had a good time. We had a good time playing. I'm getting to the point now where it's I'm super good with the ships and getting around. And like I said before, it's one of those games where you you actually level up by actually getting better in the game. Like you don't actually like your character doesn't level up.
Yeah.
You as a person, like in learning, like, oh, okay, I need to raise my sails now. I need to drop the anchor now. Like
It's great to
learn-
play with you because it's one of those games where like I can play that game and not have to like think because Justin will just tell me when I'm supposed to raise the sail.
That's right.
It's like,
I'm
hey, Jake, can you raise the sail? Yeah, you bet. Yeah, bring it down now. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm like sitting out on the porch with my eyeglass, just like looking out at the water.
That's right. You spotted a couple of ships, which is good.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's a good time. So anyway, all right, sweet. That was a pretty good Geek Week, guys. Let's talk about our next segment, which is the Geek News.
That's all I got. That
So we got-
almost sounded
this
like
is-
the Muppets.
This is the post Kublai Khan tech that we got here.
Oh man, don't make me go sorting for an audio drop and have me drop it terribly. Just one little news item. The 2023 nominees for the prestigious Spiel des Jahres Award for tabletop board gaming were announced this week. This is the big gaming awards. This is a very big deal over in Europe. So this is the German awards for the best board games, and so there are 3 nominees. The first one is called Challengers. It is a fast-paced deck management game, and it has dinosaurs and other crazy characters in there too. So it looks interesting. And it is from ages 10 and up. And so that is a nominee. The other one is Iki, which is a samurai-based game. It is 1 year in Edo, Japan. Play 12 rounds with a new deck of cards used in each season, changing the occupations and effects you experience throughout the year. Hire and retire.
I've seen this one. Yeah.
Tour the market. It's got beautiful illustrations. It's good stuff. That one is also nominated for Game of the Year. And the third one is called Planet Unknown. This is a develop and colonize your planet with oddly shaped tiles served on a rotating tray. So the gimmick here is it has a cool, weird little tray, and you've got to put together your you have to colonize your planet and make all the tiles work together in a useful way.
It looks like a terraforming Mars with that twist that you talked about.
With kind of the spinner that you have in the Game of Life, except there's tiles. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never played these. These are nominated things, and so be looking out for those. If you get one of these awards, they will reprint the box with the award on there. It's a big deal. Even in the US, I have a couple of games on my shelf right now that I've seen this logo on for Game of the Year. So the first one was from Challengers was from One More Time Games. Iki was from Sorry We Are French, and Planet Unknown was from Adam's Apple Games.
So I was going through the pictures on Board Game Geek, that are linked in the article that you were reading from. This is one of the pictures that caught my eye, and I think it's super interesting because this is a screenshot from Tabletop Simulator. And how interesting is it that these people are using Tabletop Simulator to play test their games or introduce their games? It just, we had done a whole thing on Tabletop Simulator before in a previous episode, but I just feel like it's interesting that, that system still is a part of the gaming fabric today, even though we've all sort of gone back to gaming with friends in person and stuff like that, that these developers will use it to really, crunch test their games and stuff. So kind of interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, this has a very Tetris-y feel. I did watch Tetris on Apple TV Plus. So it's interesting.
There's that platform you're talking about right there.
Yeah, the platform in the middle. I don't know enough about it. I just report the news. I don't play every one of these games, but I like
Yeah.
them all because they're all wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, that's the news. Moving right along.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Let's get to our main topic of the night, which is the RPG mechanics that we hate. And even if we don't hate them, that we just really, really, really dislike. So
today's a gripe session.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna
Grr.
gripe here. We're gonna vent. We're gonna jam a little bit. And,
It's the internet. We're gonna complain on the internet like no one has ever done that before.
Exactly. So we're gonna put on our grumpy old men hats and shake our hands at shake our fists at the son of RPG development, right? So we've all kind of come up with a list of things that we are not crazy about. And I'll start with my first one. My first one that we have, it actually comes from one of my favorite RPG games that I love, but I don't love this mechanic in there, and I don't know that there's an alternative though. It's the dodge mechanic. So when you're fighting, the way that it works in Warhammer, like you're in a fist fight or you're hitting with a club or something like that, right? You roll your hit and you have your target number that you're hitting. And so like in Cthulhu, it's probably something like you have to roll under a 25 because that's just how you're a normal person, right? You got to roll under a 25. And so like I was playing in a game where a dude rolled a 1, which is like an amazing critical, like above and beyond success with that, right? And then my guy gets to do it, and he rolls a dodge. Now, because of the dodge, he didn't roll a 1. He rolled really high, though. He rolled like a 10. I rolled a dodge that was like a 3. So I rolled a better dodge, and because of that, he missed completely. And he's like, dude, I rolled so well. And I'm like, yeah, my guy rolled well too. But it just really, like, there's several times that it just really took the wind out of the sails of the player who rolled super well to hit. And it's like, no, you missed completely. It wasn't like, oh, you got a partial hit or, oh, like something like that. It's just like, yeah, you whiffed. Sorry. Just because the dude just like dodged out of the way as you were like swinging the bat or whatever it was.
And you wasted all that precious time doing 2 rolls, adjudicating it and complaining about it.
Yeah. That honestly, Dan, like that was the worst part about it. And I think this mechanic works okay, and I'm giving it the most strongest benefit of the doubt here. It works okay when players know how and when to do it, but most players that have played Cthulhu don't know how and when to roll a dodge, and so they're like, "Oh wait, so I get to roll a dodge here? Okay," and then they roll it, then they got to check their numbers. They got to say, "So wait, I got a better success than you got a better success," and then they have to like compare, and you're just like, "Dude, this just like." It just takes a long time, and what it does is the dodge ends up extending combat like really long. It can make for a really long session, and we saw this in our Warhammer game, like in our Rogue Trader game. The combat would just last so long because like, oh, I dodge, now I dodge, now I dodge. Especially if you got a player that's like heavy high dodge, like our friend Nick invested heavily into dodge, so he was dodging everything. So
the only time that's a really good thing is when the game is so lethal you're kind of like one hit dead.
Sure. Yeah.
Star Trek has a lot of that stuff. Like you get hit with a phaser hard, you're out, your character's dead.
Yeah.
Right. And they have this game mechanic where you get one opportunity to just kind of hand wave one hit that came your way in every combat round, but that goes away. And the next time they come at you hard, you'll probably die.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see it. Dodge is good if you've dialed up the stakes. If you're wearing super thick armor and you're dodging, and it's like lame.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, like you've got dodge that is, and parry kind of falls in that too, right?
Parry,
same
diff.
It's the same kind of mechanic. To be fair, like your hit points in Call of Cthulhu are like 12, and like a gun can do like 1d10 damage. Yeah. So like it could, I mean, it may not kill you outright in the beginning, but it's really going to hurt you, So, which a gunshot should do, right? In theory, like if you're playing crunchy rules, But man, like you can dodge a bullet. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a bullet. So I mean, like it's anyway.
Dodgeball.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's a good one. All right, we let's dodge that question.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Dan, you're up next. What do you got for us?
You know what? I see the logic to it is using hit points or vitality points for spells or powers. Old versions of D&D, the 3.5, if you were going to be casting a lot of spells, you'd be spending vitality, which is almost the equivalent of spending your hit points to do a thing. And I know it's really cinematic. It's really cute to see, Grogu use the force power and then fall over asleep. But in actual gameplay, it's crazy annoying. It's super annoying. So I'm not a fan of it. And a lot of systems have ditched that component. That many systems have left that rule in the rearview mirror. So because I know Pathfinder was a derivative of 3.5. So getting rid of the vitality as a battery to power stuff, I think, is lame. You find something else to power it, in my opinion. That's my gripe.
I think it works in systems that are what's it called when like magic is scarce, high fantasy, or it works in those systems where like magic is not supposed to come into play.
Yeah.
But in like rare occasions, and there's an extreme cost for it. But
I think I could be wrong. I think low fantasy is when, if you're going to do a spell, you better want to do that spell.
Yeah. You're tapping into something that's not normally in your,
I've got to remember, but I think it was Blackbird's, aka Zweihander, that I played in, that you could cut yourself if you're doing magic to boost the chances of success. So it wasn't a necessary, it wasn't necessary to cast a spell, but if you wanted to be sure that thing would go up. Oh, it's Frostgrave.
Frostgrave, yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to boost the chances of that thing going off, you can cut yourself to do it.
It's like a drinking thing. It's like, you're gonna cut, cut,
Exactly.
Because everyone's trying to get their spells off. So
so it's one of those things that it's like I agree that shouldn't be the base currency of spell casting, Dan. Having it cost your health or your morale or your spirit, like whatever you're tracking to stay awake, or or living. Like, it shouldn't be your base currency, but I don't mind it when it can be used to boost it or augment it, because like you're saying, like, I am willing to sacrifice a little bit here to get to push my luck a bit more.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
So
yeah, definitely.
Cool. Jay, what do you got?
My first one is I'm actually going to switch my first one. I think overpowered classes has been one of my biggest gripes ever, when people make a system where you can't pick all of the other classes, because if you do, you're just underpowered relative to your other players. And the biggest example of that was the Star Wars Galaxy or Saga
Edition. Yeah.
If you were not a Jedi, you were nobody.
You were nobody.
Nobody in that.
You were nobody, and the only way to get around it was to ban Jedi.
Yeah,
that's a broken game.
And it's not that you could role play, but when it came to adjudication, there was no reason for you to try to do it, because your friend who's playing a Jedi should do it. Yeah. If your party wanted to win, that's the problem. The mechanics destroyed the role play, because if you wanted to win, you just let the Jedi guy roll the dice, because he was going to be better at everything.
And that was because they decided to build that Star Wars system based off of 3.5 and what became 4.0 D&D. So if you're a Jedi, you're also the best melee fighter, and you're also the only magic user. And they had to combine both of those in an overpowered class. It was just overpowered. And so it was awful. It became just a game to run Jedi.
Yep.
You didn't run anything else, unless you said, okay, guys, let's make characters. No one is allowed to use the Force. Done. Go.
Yeah. I mean, I think at one point I tried to, in typical fashion, I tried to rebel against that. And I picked a soldier who specialized in like sniping, And the only way I could get useful in a fight was I cross-classed into Jedi, so I could use the Force to help me shoot better.
I know. It was
like, dumb. There was no way. At that point, I was like, whatever.
Yeah, I had every book in the series. I sold them all on eBay. Yeah, that's a great one. All right, Justin, back to
Well,
you.
so I just want to add real quick.
Oh.
I think that some of this still exists today in 5e, though, Jason. They have a lot of the unearthed arcana and stuff that comes out that is sort of being play tested. But man, you can find some of these like mixed classes. Like Mike, I'm going to call you out a little bit. Our friend Mike, he was playing in our D&D campaign, and his original character died. And then he had a monk, and that was doing okay. And then he decided to switch again to another character. And he's like, "Hey, can I use this? Can I use this?" I don't even know if he used an unearthed arcana, but he ended up coming up with like a paladin warlock.
It was like a paladin warlock. It was totally like
Yeah.
a
It's broken.
combo.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so he was doing like all sorts of crazy stuff with it. And it was like, I mean, in Warhammer parlance, we call that like net listing. Like, you know, like you go out on the internet and you find like these, you know, on the forums, and you kind of find
Somebody
these like
broke the
crazy
game.
combos that like are breaking the game. And
Yeah.
I think you can still do that. And so as a GM, I try to say, look, if it's in the source book, you can use it, right? Like if it's in the source book, you can use it. Now, that didn't help the Star Wars game that you guys played, right? Because the source book kind of created the problems. But
No,
I
and
think
Jay got me back because when we started our first 5e,
Yeah.
I found some bunch of unearthed arcana that I wanted to use
said,
on my
"Nope."
warlock. And he's like, "Nope, you can't." And I was like, "Why not, Jay? This is awesome." He's like, "No," and
Yeah.
it worked out great. But yeah, same. That is one of those problems. Is and the other thing is some of those games. It happens in a lot of RPGs where you have guys who will go buy the supplement that matches their character and helps them be better. And
Right.
the DM or GM never bought that supplement,
Mhm.
or they never bought Xanatars. They don't know what combos you're trying to run or whatever. That happens all the time, not as much as it used to with the hard splat books that we had in 3, 3.5, and 4.0 of D&D and a bunch of other RPGs. But yeah, that's a very real problem, which is kind of like, I bought the book, I'm gonna put this on my character DM, and if you don't like it, that you suck.
Yeah.
And I've been that player. You know,
Mhm.
you could just outspend your GM, and your GM's like, I don't want to buy a supplement for every time somebody wants to upgrade a class or multi.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And I think 5e tried to tamp that down a lot because you only have Xanatars, Tasha's, and the player's handbook. By this time in the age of the game, you had in splat books. What do you think, Jay? There would have been about 20 or 30 different splat books to pull.
Yeah.
pull
I mean, there's still more books than, I mean, not necessarily splat books, but you get every adventure book has like new classes, new spells, new things like that you can add. So, I mean, there's still a lot of source books now in 5e that you can play from, but
they're consciously trying not to do that. They did not they never did the splat book on 5e. They never did. Here's your fighter book. Here's your wizard book, like they did with every other line.
Yeah. And I think that the unearthed arcana, they're doing it right. They're saying like, hey, here are these cool classes that you can do as like a ranger. Like here's a cool class that you can do as a construct type thing, you know. And so that's good, but then it may also, the way that they're doing it also makes it easy for the GM to say like, we are not doing unearthed arcana.
Yeah.
So if you do something from there, like we're not doing that in our book.
And the other thing is they've given it away for free, and that helps a lot because then you don't put the GM in the position of, oh, do I have to go just buy everything when everything comes out all the time?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. So my next one. Let's see. What do I have on my list here? Okay. Oh yes, this is the one that prompted this topic in my mind. I really, especially in D&D, I hate spell components. Okay, like you know, you're like, oh, you want to cast that spell? Do you have a little bit of fire moss that's in your pouch? Because if you don't, then you can't cast that spell. You know, and you're like, oh, seriously, right now, like, you know, and the thing is that what, like, the worst part about this thing of D&D is that nobody looks at the spell components because nobody actually uses them or plays them, and so it's a mechanic that's in the game that is just kind of
In the way.
archaic at this point. Yeah, and it's kind of in the way. And it's like and here's when it pops up. You never ask to use spell components when you're casting Fireball. You never ask for spell components when you're, asking to do like Raise the Dead or not Raise the Dead, to do like death toll or whatever it is. Like, you've got all of these chromatic orb. You never get asked for that. You always get asked if you have components when you want to do resurrection.
Yeah.
Because your friend's dead. You know the
Yeah.
spell, and they're like, do you have 300 gold pieces worth of diamonds in your pocket?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you can't resurrect them. That's like, and so it ends up becoming this like, seriously, we haven't been playing like spell components this entire game, and now you're asking me about this, and
Right. Or you have a guy who multi-classes to get an arcane focus.
Yep.
And then they're like, oh, I have an arcane focus, so I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
Which is like most of the magic users have arcane foci.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's one area of this that it's not spell components, but it's in that same category when you look at a spell's stat block, and that is the somatic.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I like, because you can,
Yeah,
if your hands are tied, you can say you can't cast that spell because that spell is a
right.
hand wavy.
You've got a warhammer in one hand and a shield in the other. How are you supposed to do it?
That I like, but I'm with you on components, and I think that translates also to like bullets and ammos and more science fiction ones.
Yeah.
I actually do like tracking ammo at a macro level, like how many clips do you have, but not at the bullet level.
Right. And in some games, it's like a bad thing, like rolling a threat in Star Wars. Rolling a threat in Star Wars. Oh, you just ran out of ammo. Oh, okay. Yeah. And they have talents and stuff that allow you to avoid. You can counteract that with another game mechanic.
That's where the macro tracking comes in. I think that it can be fun from a story kind of mechanics standpoint at the macro with, like you said, but if you try to just, all right, how many bullets do you have? All right, let's buy bullets before we go into battle. It's just you're playing a simulation.
And did you notice
Oregon Trail? I need 500 bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did 3 bags of salt.
Did you guys notice in the movie that nobody was doing components? There was no magic user components for anything. The Red Wizards were not using components. Nobody was using components in the Hollywood movies. So I'm like, well, that looks like it has a D&D logo on it. That's the equivalent of a rule book. We're going with that.
Yeah.
All right. The next one is loosely connected to dodge rolls. It's very similar, but it's a little different. It's when the accuracy of your shot and your damage roll are not connected in any way. So you roll a super high, awesome, accurate hit. And then you're like, oh, well, now roll a 1d4 damage. Well, you only did 1d4 damage. Now, D&D compensates for this a little bit with a critical hit. But if you're blowing through somebody's armor class by 10 points, it doesn't have any material effect on how much damage you do. So I like an RPG system where accuracy always translates into more damage every time, or something special, or it has to have meaning. There's nothing more. It's like the dodge roll thing. It's demoralizing to be like, yeah, I really nailed that. And then you're like, womp, womp. He shrugs off your damage.
Alien Mechanic handles this in a good way, right? Because in the Free League system, you're just rolling D6s and fishing for sixes, right? So if you're better at something, because whether you have an optimized gun or you have a skill in it, you're rolling more D6s. All you need is 1 6 to hit and do the base damage. Every additional 6 is a stunt that you can use to do things such as add additional damage or just other story-based things. So it's like, if you get more 6s because you had a better shot or because you rolled better and you effectively shot better, it does more damage to the.
It gives you gives you something.
Gives you something back for being better. Yeah.
No one ever complains when you barely make a shot and then you roll huge damage. No one ever complains about that, right? Like, oh, you eked it out. You got the exact lowest number possible, and oh well, you rolled amazing on damage. Now he flies over dead.
That's like David
and Goliath. David and Goliath. Everybody's like, woo, awesome. No one likes to see a player get hit like that, even though that's possible. It does happen occasionally. But yeah, I do
more
want to
often
see
than
this.
Earth Dawn.
So I think it's an interesting topic of discussion, and we don't need to hang out too much on. But the whole concept of armor class in a D&D and other systems, right? It's just supposed to represent your ability to get through their armor, combined together, right? Which is why D&D, they have feats like dodges, feats, and things like that. But it's supposed to represent, like, it's supposed to be a macro view. Like, it's a combination of their ability to move out of the way, chink off of their armor, like all that stuff. So is there really a better, besides a crit, is there really a better hit? Or is every hit a normal hit?
Yeah, unless you're doing location, like what we were doing in, what was the playtest we did? Was that Free League Press? That was
RuneQuest.
RuneQuest was like, oh, well, you hit this piece of armor, you get hit there again, there's nothing there. It's going to come
That was a martial combat style.
Martial combat style. That's a lot more. Yeah, it's tough. As much as you aggregate it, you also make it harder to make it useful from a story point of view. I just want a good hit to be I want a good hit to be a good hit, and a bad hit to be a miss is a miss, and a hit is a hit, and an awesome hit should really knock the bad guy down, not annoy the bad guy. All right, next. Who's next? Jay.
I'm next. I think my next one is class-specific mechanics and rules annoy me. They put a lot of burden on the GM, but they also create a cultural barrier between you and your other players at the table who aren't playing your class.
Yeah.
So, when you play together and you all use a common mechanic system, regardless of what your classes are, like to attack is always the same. To dodge is, whatever, is always the same. To do this is always the same. You just do it, you do it in a lore perspective differently based off of what your class is and what you're trying to do. But when you have a class-specific rule, like only applies to that class, and it has mechanics only around that class, you've kind of isolated yourself from the players around you and actually playing the game. You're almost playing a little bit of a different game.
Your own game. And
your own game.
One of my annoyances that I put on the list was the opposite of that, which is everybody is doing the same generic thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think there's a balance in there. Like if you
don't
have talents or feats or special abilities or anything that lets you tweak a rule, then it's like you shoot a blaster. What's your blaster skill? It's 5 dice. Pick up 5 dice, roll 5 dice. You're shooting that stormtrooper. That stormtrooper has a 3 dice dodge. That's your difficulty. I rolled 3 over and over and over and over and over again. That becomes like mind-numbing in a way.
It does, and I think that's where that's where you mix things up by not have everybody be a soldier. So that in combat you're doing different things. Well, I'm going to try to shoot the dude because that's just what I was trained to do in life. It's like, well, I'm an infiltrator. Like, I'm not going to just try to shoot that guy. I'm going to try to sneak around and do something else. So but the mechanics can be similar. The mechanics can be the same, but the classes and the backgrounds of the characters had them react differently in a situation using the exact same rule sets to flavor up the thing. Versus, the worst example is a Decker in Shadowrun, where it is 100% a completely different game. I mean, the game,
it's
like,
a mini game.
I'm going to shoot. Okay, I'm going to do this. Okay, I want to hack his data pad. Okay, everybody go take a break. We're going to work on the Decker. You guys go get a pizza. We'll be back, come back in 10 minutes and we'll figure this hacking thing out.
Yeah. I was doing that in Shadows of the Beanstalk, Genesis. Genesis tries to pour a lot of water on that, but it's still kind of the same thing. You're still off doing your own magical world and everybody else is twiddling their thumbs. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a hard balance right there, right? Because there are like mechanics you got to do, but still though, I'm glad you gave an example, Jason, because I was trying to think of one, and as soon as you mentioned Shadowrun, I was like, oh yes, that's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think it's okay to have some. Another one which may be tricky is the weird magic with in D&D with the is it the warlock?
Sorcerer? The sorcerer.
Sorcerer, yeah.
Has wild magic or something.
Magic, yeah. Wild magic, right. And that one's not as intrusive, but it is an example of something that has to be tracked a little separately that you could forget about. And then there's always the question, if I don't incorporate this, am I breaking the balance of that class?
Of the game,
Yeah. But anyways, all right. What about you, Justin?
Let's see. my last one, actually, I wrote one down. I might have four tonight, depending on how things go. But I'm going back to D&D. I realized, did I do all three D&D ones?
Nope.
No, the first one was a dodge roll. Okay.
Dodge
All
rolls,
right.
okay.
All right. So my next one is a D&D one. I really dislike inspiration.
Really?
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it. Yeah, I don't like it because I don't like inspiration because, like, while I love good role play, I feel like the GM's discretion on handing it out can seem very arbitrary.
Yeah.
Somebody may feel like they're doing awesome role play, and the GM's like, okay, that's nice. And then somebody else is doing good role play, and you're like, that is 100% on the money. I'm giving you inspiration. And really what it's saying is that your role play is aligning with my vision of this game right now. And so therefore I'm giving you a point of good role play. And then you can use that for something else. I think it ends up being like, I don't know. When I hand out inspiration, I feel like I have to be very cognizant that I'm not playing favorites.
I was going to say that favoritism.
Yeah.
It can breed favoritism.
Yeah.
Or if there's a player that's kicking a lot of butt, you don't give that guy inspiration because you have to like throw a bone to people who are not kicking butt. And it's like, well, I played in a campaign for a year without getting one inspiration once.
Yeah.
Of D&D. Yeah.
Let me break it into two separate so I can see where your actual concern is. There is the mechanic of inspiration, which lets you roll 2 d20s and take the higher. And then there is the mechanic of the GM being able to distribute
that allows you to do that.
Yes.
Which one of the do you have an issue with both?
No, I don't. I have no issue with somebody taking advantage every now and then.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, or rolling advantage every now and then, like that, because that mechanic is also built into the game elsewhere. Like, the rogue can get advantage when they perform their actions. Like
that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. So the mechanic, and you can also get advantage by flanking. I know that's kind of
there's lots of ways to get advantage, which you can use inspiration to
so
do.
I think it's common enough that like having somebody roll advantage every once in a while isn't going to break the game at all. You know what I mean?
And they did the math. Rolling in advantage is equivalent of a +5 bonus.
Yeah. So it's not that, it's the distribution of it that I feel puts the DM and the players in sometimes a weird transactional state of where they're trying to be like, do I get inspiration now? Like I clapped my seal flappers well enough for you. Do I get, do I get inspiration now?
Yeah.
And you're like, no fish for you, but this guy over here, he gets some, and so that's where my concern is with inspiration.
Or in one case, I was being punished for things I did as a GM in another game, in another system.
Oh yeah.
By another GM who's like, no, I'm not going to hand this to you because one time I didn't like your call against me.
Yeah.
And we don't have to identify who that was, but we
play the hand we're dealt, Dan.
We still game with all these friends. We're all still friends, but that literally was a thing. That was one of the reasons why I was being barred from inspiration.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
So yeah, I don't like inspiration as a mechanic in the game and it's primarily driven by how it is distributed, and it's very subjective, very, very subjective on the
game. We're so grouchy.
Yeah, this is me shaking my fist.
Get off my RPG lawn.
All right, who's up next? Dan, I think you got the next one.
Me, and this is I hate very slow, non-existent character advancement. I find it tedious. I find it boring. I think the whole point is to make sure that the characters grow in meaningful ways. And I think like game designers want everybody to play their game for like every Wednesday for 2 years straight. And they want to inch up your character advancement. And it also makes life easier on the GM. But as a player and as a GM, I'd rather see character advancement. I'd rather see there's something fun about making your character more awesome because you went on the adventure. The worst offender is Star Trek Adventures. You guys haven't played that one over multiple sessions. That one's like, well, you have like 6 basic attributes. You can move 1 point from one and take it down and plus it up on another one. I'm like, that's just like the worst. It's like to get a +1 on a basic attribute is like, whoa. That's only going to happen once in a blue moon. And like, I liked some of it because it was based on things that happened during that adventure. You could write something down and that would help you get kind of a teeny edge bonus. You can like, oh, remember when this happened? Therefore, next time I roll that, maybe I get a teeny tiny thing later. But man, I super hate crappy advancement. We play too many games that we never fully play the whole game because we never get to the back nine of the golf course ever.
Yeah.
Every RPG, we always play the first 4 holes of the course, and then we're like, I guess we're done and bored. Let's go do another course. We never fully push the game to where it could or should be.
So I got to share this. This is from Hell Knight, right?
Hell Knight.
Yeah.
Survive character advancement.
Yeah. So the Hell Knight, right? This is the game we talked about, right? That little like zine thing. I love it. Character
horrible.
advancement. If you need levels, please visit your nearest arcade.
Get bigger guns.
Dude, I love what it says. People don't improve. It's scratched out. Not even in hell, scratched out.
Yeah.
That is the exact opposite. Yeah.
Yeah. A pat on the back. Well done. Now go bring me a beer. This is like what the GN says if you want to level up, right? But this game, I think it depends on the game.
Yeah.
But not every game is built. For level advancement, but most of them are. Most role-playing games are absolutely built for character advancement.
If you're playing a disposable character, of course, it's like, oh, I died 3 times. I played 3 guys in one session.
Right.
Then you want character creation to be awesome. You want character creation to be awesome and powerful, short, quick, and dangerous.
So it's funny you mentioned this because I was just thinking about the Call of Cthulhu character advancement, which is a little rough, to be honest with you. But again, you got to kind of think about it in the system that it is, which is these are regular people. And I think it kind of follows the same sentiment of Hell Knight, which is people don't advance like that, right? Like they don't all of a sudden like unlock new magical powers. So in Cthulhu, if you successfully used one of your skills that you have, and there's 30 of them in the game, you make a check next in the box next to that skill. Yeah. At the end of the game, you take that skill, and let's say I have a 25% in driving, but I successfully drove a van, right? At the end of the game, I can roll my percentile dice as long as it's over that 25, not under, but over that 25. I get to increase that skill by D3.
See, I'm okay with that because you're going to get rewarded for doing a thing, and you're going to be rewarded quickly.
Yeah, but still though, like the level up is like 1 point.
I hate like
out of 100.
I hate
1 to 3%.
Yeah,
I hate going for like 5 adventures to get to level 2 or level 3. Sure. It's like wow, and I don't like how swingy. I don't know. That's the wrong word. It's like I was crappy yesterday, and now I'm today because I got that extra 5 XP, and suddenly now I'm more lethal. That goes along with it. I am too generous as a GM on XP. I'm so generous. Like we do the West Marches thing. You guys have kind of fallen off of that. And we have rules about how much XP I'm allowed to give out. I chafe underneath them because in my games, I'm going to give everybody more XP because more XP is more fun. And we're like, oh, well, what if everybody's too dangerous? So what? We'll be making new characters in another system, in 3 months. Who gives a crap? Make the game fun. So I am a massive offender when it comes to doling out XP like candy. And you know what? Everyone's always happier after a session after you've given out more XP. Everyone leaves happier. Womp womp.
Here's some candy.
Do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's worth it every time. All right. Yeah. Who's next?
Mine. I think this one is one of those, not that I hate, but that I don't really like. And that is the swinginess of D20. I think D20 can be extremely swingy. You can have a guy who's super, super awesome. He's a trained fighter. He's been fighting for 30 years, right? With this same sword for 30 years.
And roll 3 on a D20.
Like, he can bounce it on his pinky. And you get 5 bad rolls in a row.
And
it's like, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. And you can always, and you should always play with it in story and be like, maybe you slipped on a rock last night, or something like that, or ping.
Still,
But sometimes it can be so swingy it just doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
and it can be really frustrating.
or you
when you've
pop all
invested so
your
much.
natural 20s on things that don't matter. I
Or
rolled a 20. Oh,
Yeah.
that was on a skill. It doesn't. You don't get anything
Yeah.
out of that. I'm like, oh well, this sucks.
Yeah. Or you have you have an enemies that are little peons that just happen to roll crits.
Boom.
And maybe you
boom,
roll 2
boom.
crits in a row and you take out like 3 like seasoned veteran guards. It's like it can be really swingy. Now that goes the other way, it can go really bad, right? If you make it such that the game is not swingy, has a very, wide curve, then it gets a little washed down at times and a little less epic. There's less epic comment. And I think that's one reason why people do like the swinginess of D20 systems is it makes for those really epic moments when it does swing crazy the other direction. So it just depends on what you want. But I like a little bit more of a little flatter, but that's me.
What it does is it inspires people to do min-maxing on character building where they add this +2 and that +2 and that +1. And it incentivizes a certain kind of behavior where you're compensating for you're compensating for the variance of the die by min-maxing. I'm sorry, Justin, go ahead.
No, it's true. Do you 100% right there, Dan? I think that the system incentivizes the min-max. 100% true. Do you feel like a D100 system is less swingy than a D20?
I think by definition it is less swingy.
Yeah.
But because there's a much larger range of values inside of the inside of the space, sample space.
It's really a secret D10 system.
Yeah, right.
And so it's kind of easier to get a hold of the higher numbers.
Yeah. The other question that I had was
you have to run some stats on that, but anyways.
Yeah.
I feel like I've never felt the crazy swinginess in a D100 that I have in a D20 system.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there are ways to adjust that D100 that I think that you don't get in a D20. For example, if you are fighting in the mud on a hill against an opponent, right? In a D100 game, you can adjust the target that you are rolling to make it harder, right? And same thing with your opponent. Maybe it's harder for them to hit you as well. But in a D20, like D&D, you don't have that in combat. You can adjust the DC of your target for skill checks.
Yeah,
right.
You have less granularity.
Exactly.
You have 1/20 versus 1/100, right?
What you're looking at on a D100 is you're really measuring the first digit, and the second digit is just a tiebreaker.
Yep. Yeah, totally. So also the follow-up question that I also had for you, Jason, is what are some systems that doesn't feel as swingy for you?
The Free League game system does not.
The Year Zero system?
Yeah, the Year Zero, because you already know how well you're going to do on the roll based on how many D6 you can throw in. And you only need 1/6 on all of those to succeed whatever you're trying to do. All the others just give you extra stuff you can do for story-wise, right?
Right.
So I think it has a much less swingy, and there's probably math nerds that are running the things, but based on just the feel of the game, I think the Year Zero system is much less swingy. And the Year Zero is not the only game system that has done that based off of just adding D6s to your pool and fishing for sometimes a 5 and a 6, right?
Yeah, my answer to that question is anytime you're mixing and matching different die values together and adding those values together for a result, that is the opposite of swingy. Yeah. Even if you're pairing a D4 with a D20, that is more fun than a D20 by itself.
Yeah, the Cortex system did that.
Yeah, and so there's die steps, but when you're mixing different things together, maybe you're picking up 3 D4s and 1 D10. For me, anytime you have a wild probability curve, that means something more interesting is going to happen than.
And that I think Shadow of the Demon Lord, right, had the Banes and Boons system. that could affect your D20 roll, just as you're talking about, Dan. But I also think that it gets to, like, you look at the narrative dice of Star Wars, and you start throwing in blacks and blues and, you know, different things like that.
What that does is that's exactly what I'm talking about, where you have lots of different, and on every face, you're not just doing numbers, there's symbols,
right?
You know, you can have a double symbol on a D6 and a blank on a D8, you know, it's all over the place. That's actually pushed to the max, and there's 3 different angles of succeeding. There's 3 vectors of success on every die roll you pick up. There's did you basically succeed? Did you generate threat or advantage? Or did you triumph or despair? And you have to answer 3 questions just by picking up those dice and rolling. Yeah. So that's all the way on the other side. If that sounds like fun, and I think it's fun because I enjoy that, go that way. It is not a simple way to adjudicate dice. It is a complex way.
Yeah. I think maybe just adding more than 1 dice when you do a skill roll.
Sure.
You know, like with the year 0, you're just adding a bunch of D6s.
Yep. And that works too.
Yeah.
That works too. Cool.
Anyways, that was my last one.
Cool. I have one kind of honorable mention that I want to talk about, and it's not so much a mechanic as it is, I think, game design. But I really, really hate boring weapon stats. Like, I hate that like a sword and a club and a spear and a halberd and like a billy club all are like 1d6.
Yep, that's
like,
all it is.
You know what I mean? And you're just like, okay, so it doesn't matter what I'm carrying; it's the same damage profile or same hit thing. Like,
oh, it's bludgeoning. Oh, it's piercing.
Exactly. Give me a little bit of flavor, like this. You know, I don't know. Just give me a little bit of flavor, like. I want something that, like, a spear should be able to have, like, maybe extra defense that adds to your AC, or I don't know. Like, it really annoys me when I go through these weapon tables and I'm like, okay, well, why does this spear cost 5 gold and this sword is 7 gold, but they're literally the same stats on the thing? Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's so stupid. So
one's piercing and one's slashing.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, okay. I mean, and to be fair, like, that is something that adds to it, but the problem is I don't think that a lot of people play.
A lot of people ignore that.
And they ignore it, even though, like, monster stats do have, like, immunities and vulnerabilities and stuff like that.
I feel like that really only comes up with skeletons.
Yeah. Or if you're a monster manual geek, this is the other thing. It rewards bad behavior. Because if you are a player and you buy the monster manual and you start memorizing who's vulnerable to what, which is a metagame tactic that freaking works, and you're like, no, this time I'm going to use my rapier. Why? It does less damage. No reason.
Yeah, right. It's faster in my hand.
Yeah. Do you remember the Gamers Darkness Rising?
Yeah.
Where the guy's like, he's quizzing his friend. They've got like the monster manual. He like flips through and he says, one of the guys like, resilient to blah, 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 blah. Like they're like trying to memorize the monster manual.
That's based in reality. Based in reality. You know, I had my 12-year-old nephew come up to me and say, he had the monster manual in his head. He says, what's the most dangerous monster in the monster manual? And I was like, I'm like, oh my gosh. He pulled it up. He told me about all the armor class and all the attacks. I was like, dude, you're never going to fight that monster. And if you throw that monster at a player and you're GMing, you're a bad person. 12-year-old child. You're a bad person.
Yeah.
Nice. So anyway, that, do you guys have any other ones that you want to send out as an honorable mention?
I just love Jeffrey. Jeffrey, if you're listening, I was just kidding. You're not a bad person. You're a great kid. I'm glad you're into D&D, and I'm glad you run D&D for kids younger than you. Sorry.
Yeah. Awesome.
I think sometimes I struggle with healing mechanics. I feel like, in a lot of systems, when it does come time to heal, everyone's like, hey, let's do some healing. And everyone's got to get their books out. And they're like, how do we heal again? How do we heal? How does healing work? Okay, wait, if I rest for 6 hours, I get 1 hit point. But if I rest for 8 hours, 2 more hours, I'll get 12,
Right. Yeah.
And then there's a lot of hand waving by GMs. It's like, okay, the next day is like, well, what about our hit points and our endurance and exhaustion? It's like, oh, you're all back to normal. Let's just, go back to normal.
The other funny thing too is it's like drinking a potion in combat. I think it's hilarious.
Wait a minute.
Thought of it, right? Like, hold on, stop attacking me.
So Shadow the Demon Lord did that well because the potion didn't take effect until the bottom of the round.
Right. Yeah.
I thought that was a good counter to that.
It's still kind of
It's
ridiculous.
still kind of funny that you're going to stop the middle of combat and be like, hold on, I need to take a sip of this potion here.
Okay, I have a Star Wars moment. Okay, the stim pack was introduced in the FFG Star Wars game. It didn't exist in any of the games. It didn't exist in the lore. They put it in the game, and it's like an incidental. It's almost nothing to give yourself like 5 extra hit points in an emergency. But if you do another one, it's worth 4, and then another one is 3, 2, 1. So they showed a stim pack in Andor. In a critical moment, this guy was out cold on his back, about to die. They're like, we need to give him a stim pack. And it was this huge dramatic moment. And they shoved it in his chest. And he stood up and he did what he had to do. And then he laid back down and died, which was kind of like what we had in the game. It made me happy that something from the RPG made its way into the screen. That always brings me infinite joy. But it just shows the ridiculousness of that game mechanic, which is everybody's running around shooting blasters around a corner, grabbing a stim pack and jamming it in their thigh as an incidental. When in the show, it was like everybody gathered around to do the stim pack. So anyway, I thought that brought me some level of amusement in Andor. But man, when RPG stuff makes its way on screen, I'm sitting 6 inches off my couch. That is nothing but pure joy for me. So,
for sure. Well, our listeners, thank you for sticking with us for an hour and 15 minutes. Normally, this is a shorter episode than normal. But what mechanics don't you like? Do you agree with some of what we had said here tonight, or do you like inspiration? Do you like the dodge roll, that type of thing? Or are there other things that irk you a little bit more and wish that never existed? So let us know. Everybody's got their opinion, and they're all pretty much worth the same. So, it's great. So thank you guys so much for listening tonight, though. We definitely appreciate that. And as always, we will see you on the tables. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.